All right, so we're interviewing my dad, Dick LeBeau.
My grandpa, Dick
That's-
LeBeau.
That's Grant LeBeau's voice you hear. This is Rick LeBeau speaking, and Dick LeBeau is the one on camera. And it is Thursday, May 7th, 2015, and my dad was born on September 1st, 1934 in Connecticut. That's where we're going to start.
Right. Putnam, Connecticut,
So you stayed in one town your entire life while you were growing up.
for 17 years.
Okay.
I graduated in 1952.
So you did graduate.
Yeah.
Okay.
1952, and I went to live with my sister in Indiana for 6 months. And I ended up joining the Marine Corps on January the 1st in Indiana.
And we were curious as to what prompted you to join the Marines.
Well, the Korean War was on for one, and I was working with 3 or 4 buddies of mine that we all decided, hey, let's go join the Marine Corps. So we just did.
There wasn't a draft, right?
No. So we
So
went,
what? So I mean, did you have a sense of patriotism that drove you to do this, or just we're not doing anything else right now? Let's go.
probably all of the above.
Yeah.
We it was more of a patriotism thing because the war was on, and we figured,
Right.
I was working at a gas station, and that wasn't any big deal. So I
Right.
said, why not? So I went down, joined the Marine Corps, and we ended up in San Diego because Indiana was evidently where they sent you from Indiana to go to San Diego for boot camp.
Okay.
And
So you had been working at a gas station just as a filling station attendant, basically.
Yeah. That was in those days. You actually filled the gas tanks.
Right. Yeah, it was full service back then. Do you remember?
Right.
Happen to remember how much gas cost back in those days?
Probably 25 cents a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since,
So you had lived through World War II. Did you have much of a conscious memory of that era?
oh yeah, yeah. My uncle was in the Marine Corps during that war, and I had my sister's husband was in the Navy in that war. Neither one of them evidently saw a lot of action because I never heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
But and they managed to live through it. So.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Did you have any friends or relatives who did
No.
lose their lives in
No.
either of
No,
those
it's-
conflicts? Yeah.
No, it was over before I was even old enough to.
Mm-hmm.
You would have been
8,
11
9,
or 12 when it officially
40,
came to an end.
40,
45.
10
45.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10, 11, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Did anyone in your family, were they working towards the war effort in factories or anything like that?
no, my dad was worked in a woolen mill. He had that job before and after the war. My mother didn't work at all until later. She went to work in a button factory,
Hmm.
and that was the little town of Putnam that I was from. All they had was mills.
Mm-hmm.
So the woolen mills, button factories, like that.
Hmm.
Everybody worked in the mill. So,
Interesting. I never knew what the wealth generation of
production, yeah,
production was of
yeah.
Putnam before.
That was it. My dad got out of it for, I'd say, a year and a half maybe. He bought a beer bar in this little town next to ours,
Mm-hmm.
and he was running this beer bar for about a year and a half, I guess, and it almost made him crazy, trying to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so he finally got rid of that and went back to the mill.
I thought your dad was in the fire department at some point. Was that
After you left the mill when he was, I'm going to say 60, he went to work as a answering phones for the fire department. That kind of thing, so.
Okay, so not what we would think of as a traditional firefighter necessarily.
No, in fact, he was a reserve cop too for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And so his name was
Armand.
Armand, and he was a twin, right?
He was a twin.
Okay. So do you have any memory of your uncle?
Yeah, my uncle was the one that was in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad died at 65. My uncle died at 85,
Wow.
and he was a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
both of them were like 5'4.5", and
Right.
so when I came back from Korea, used to walk with them to go to get coffee and stuff. And,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of funny.
How tall is your mom?
My mother was
4'10".
4'11".
Yeah.
And were
4'11".
there any tall males on that side?
No, my brothers were 5'6" maybe,
At the most.
and my sisters were 5'2".
Mhm.
I was
Well, thank you.
a freak, I guess.
You were definitely the genetic freak in your
Yeah,
family.
yeah. But anyway, after I joined the Marine Corps, I went to, like I say, San Diego for a boot camp. Went to 29 Palms, not 29 Palms, I'm sorry, Barstow, for my first duty station.
Mhm.
And from there, they sent me to Korea.
Mhm.
So a year after I joined the Marine Corps, I was in Korea.
All right. Now, so one of the gaps in my knowledge of your early days in the Marine Corps, I knew you were in Korea, but you always had sort of an offhanded, funny way of talking about your time in Korea. You never really, I never saw you emote about those days.
Well, the war.
But so you had. Did you actually wear a firearm? Were you engaged in combat? What did you do?
No, I never wore. I had a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to wear it. The war was almost over by the time I got there, 54. So,
Right.
in fact, it was over, I think. And I was as far south in Korea as you could go from the
Right.
DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I was an exchange pogue, they used to call us, I guess, PX pogue.
Okay.
And that was my job. I was basically doing accounting for the Marine Corps, for the exchange there.
Okay.
And actually ended up spending 15 months there rather than just a 12-month tour, because they moved the whole division back to the United States after when we got ready to come back. But
Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's wait for the
the clock,
the classic.
hey, it doesn't hurt anything. I'm getting one that's going to sing here pretty soon.
Oh, you're gonna get something new in
I
this
cannot
house?
wait for that.
But
I hope it's a bass that flaps around against a bass.
it's a bird that pops out and sings a song. And put the again.
Okay, so you were in Korea then for 15 months in the very southern part, and you were
Yeah.
working on the
In the
equivalent of the exchange.
Yeah.
How did you get
And-
chosen for that role, or did you volunteer for that role?
when in school, basically my main subject was accounting, was bookkeeping. I was very good in math, and
This is in high school.
and so when I got into the Marine Corps, they give you a test to see what your best thing is,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up actually my first MOS was in supply, and I don't know why that worked out, but it's part of the
Mhm.
program. And I never worked supply. I went almost directly into the exchange.
Okay.
And I was good in math, and I did a lot of accounting and stuff, so that was
Mhm.
my thing.
Right.
But
So accounting, though, is sort of we think of it at least as more or less like a solo or a small team operation. When you came back from, I'll let you get to it obviously in due time, but my recollection, of course, is you're managing this huge PX at 11 area at Camp Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we got a few years to go before we get there,
True,
but
true.
that was, looking back. So just now hearing about the accounting part itself, it makes sense that you could employ those skills as
Mhm.
part of your management,
Right.
abilities at the larger scale. But you had what I remember was your interpersonal skills with your employees and subordinates at the you seem to have this this way of keeping the office atmosphere light, and people, you had an endearing sort of approach to, your employees loved you, basically, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, I never had a problem with employees, other than I had to fire a couple of them for
Right.
Improprieties, but
Right.
I wasn't a
And they're-
pushover. I wasn't a pushover when I set out things for them to do, they had better do it, or, you know, then they were in trouble.
And then they were all Marines as well?
Initially, in the exchange, they were, except for the employees that ran cash registers and things like that. You know, those were all civilians.
Okay.
But we had Marines that were doing a lot of the extracurricular work, running little departments and stuff. But eventually, everything became civilian, except for the manager. So, but that was, again, that's way down the line from.
Right. So we're in Korea, and it's 1954.
Yeah.
And what are you doing to get? I mean, you're being in the Marines is kind of a full-time, you know, existence when you're in a station like Korea. But was there entertainment that you engaged in? What did you do?
No, the only entertainment we ever got was to like go out in the village and walk around and see what was going on and that kind of thing. There wasn't the little town that was around our base was very small.
Do you remember the name of it?
Busan. No, Pohang. We were in Pohang.
And did you ever come close to learning language?
No.
No.
And we were restricted somewhat from going out into the village a lot. You know, so we had to just kind of, when we could, we went. We didn't. Most of the entertainment was playing cards in the barracks, that kind of thing. So,
You were still single at this time, right?
oh yeah. Yeah, I was single. I had met a gal in Barstow when I was stationed there, that I was going with, for a little while before I left. Which was funny because I never had a car when I was there or anything, so I had to hitchhike back and forth from the base to there twice back and forth at night and everything. But when I came back from Korea, I went back to Barstow and met up with her again. But it never went anywhere. So she had been married and had a couple kids, and so.
Interesting.
When you came back, you were what, 19?
20.
20? Because you joined the Marines when you were 17,
18,
right?
18.
Okay.
I'd already turned 18.
Okay.
But from there, I went to Camp Helmand. And that's where
Wait, was there no El Toro in there?
I did go to El Toro. Yeah, well, yeah, you're right.
That's where you met
That's
Mom.
where I met Mom, yeah. I went to El Toro, and I was running a enlisted club, rather than an exchange.
Right.
And what is that?
It's a club for enlisted men.
So you've probably heard of
A
an
beer
officers
bar.
club.
Right.
So an enlisted club would just be
They have an enlisted
The-
club, staff NCO club, and an officers club. And so
Yeah, they don't
enlisted
want- they
men,
want equal
enlisted
between
men
the
can only
castes.
go to the enlisted club, staff NCO can only go to staff NCO clubs, and the officers go to officers clubs.
Right.
But I did work in the exchange for a little while there, and then I got asked to take over, work this enlisted club, so I did that. And that's when I met your mother.
How'd you meet?
Yeah, tell us about that night.
Well, in fact, I just gotten back from Korea, and a couple of guys, we went out, and we decided to go to a skating rink and do some roller skating.
And is that something that you had done before?
Not really. We just fooled around, but and it was late. It was like 10:30 at night. Before we got to the skating rink, and your mother was just taking her skates off because she was getting ready to go home with her mother. And when I got there, and so I'm putting my skates on, and she's taking hers off, and we decided, hey, what? Anyway, she put them back on again, and we skated for a while. So I got her phone number and all the good stuff, and called her up later. We went out a few times.
Went out a few times. So what I remember about that story,
We got married for 50 years.
from Mom's telling of that story, I didn't know that you guys met while you were in the changing area, the skate changing area. But what I do remember her saying is that she told her mom
Yeah.
that she couldn't go home just yet because she'd met the man she was going to marry. So it sounds to me like she had a pretty strong inkling that
She
you
must have
guys-
liked me a lot.
She must have. I mean, it sounds like love at first sight on her part. So do
Yeah.
you remember like being smitten at the same time, or was it kind of going
Well,
along?
I was a
because-
good woman, and I don't know about being smitten, but it was something that I wanted to follow up on. So
That's almost
I
like being
called her, and
smitten.
I actually turned 21.
And how old was
She
she?
was 20 days younger than me.
Yeah.
So she was not yet 21. I had just turned 21. In fact, I had an ID card at the time that made me 21 when I was only 20.
Okay.
Because when I got back from Korea, they lost all
Yeah.
the paperwork and stuff.
You miscreant.
And so when I went in to get a new ID card and everything, in fact, they made an ID card on a piece of cardboard that they had to cut out of a box, temporarily, because they didn't have any paper. They lost all the forms and everything else. So they gave me this ID card that was a piece of cardboard, and asked me for the date, and so I cheated a year, and so I was 21 at the time. And but anyway, we went out to a club, a local club there that had dancing and stuff, and so we had a pretty good time. And I was able to drink.
Right. But Mom was not.
Not
So that actually predates a little bit the age that I thought you were when you met Mom. I thought you guys met, and then just kind of doing the math in my head, I thought you must have met a couple of years later. So that because I was
no,
born.
I was 20,
Yeah.
and she was 20.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess we went together, I'm going to say 6, 7, 8 months, I don't know, before we decided to get married. So. But
Okay.
that happened.
So then you got. So that happened.
Then he
So
happened.
so you got married on June 1st,
56.
56, right?
Yeah.
And I was born February 22nd, 1957.
57.
So about 8
You
months and
counted
3
the,
weeks.
counted the months and the days.
Just the average length of the human gestation period, as it turns out.
It was pretty quick. Of course, I think your mother was very fertile. Because I just had to look at her cross-eyed and she got pregnant. She was pregnant 3 times in the first, 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
anyway,
one of the questions that I thought of today actually was, did you have the number of kids that you envisioned having? Did you stop earlier?
well,
than
when you
wanted,
first
or-
get married, you tell each other, oh, we're going to have about 12, whatever.
And in that era,
After the
we
first
knew
one, it
people who
gets,
did
gets
have 12.
cut. Huh?
I said in that era, we knew people in
Oh, yeah.
families that
Yeah.
did have
Oh,
8
yeah.
to 12.
Yeah, and then after the first one, you say, well, let's make it 4, And then after the second one, you say, let's quit. But,
And you have the oops.
yeah, oops, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I say, your mother was very fertile.
Uh,
And so I ended up getting
the vasectomy?
vasectomy because if we kept going, we'd have had 12.
Yeah. Huh.
So,
Well, see, I never knew that about you, that you had
worked
that
fine. Yeah.
procedure. All right, cool.
So anyway, let's see. At that point, I was stationed still at El Toro.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got transferred to Mojave
Right.
when you were just right after you were born,
Mm-hmm.
and I spent 3 years.
I don't think it was after I was born, because I was actually born in Mojave. I was born in Mojave in a Quonset hut.
We lived in the Quonset hut.
You lived in a Quonset hut?
We lived in the Quonset
Awesome.
hut, but you were born before that.
Mm-mm. It says on my birth certificate I was born in Mojave.
Well,
So,
okay,
yeah.
well, they actually had a house out in the town that was run by a couple of doctors, I guess. It was really just literally a house, but they converted it into a little hospital, and that's where you were born.
Okay.
But, yeah, you were.
Okay, so I've got to modify that story. I tell people I was born in a Quonset hut, but I guess I just lived in one.
You lived in one, yeah.
Which
Yeah, we lived in
could
a
possibly
Quonset
be
hut
better.
for the first year we were there, I guess. Then we got
Mhm.
moved into a little condominium.
Yeah, so
type
describe a
thing.
Quonset hut just for, people who
Well,
don't
basically,
know.
it was a duplex.
Mhm.
We had people on one end. We were,
Yeah, so I think of it as a tin can cut in half,
it was
lengthwise.
right.
Yeah.
Just a big metal container,
Uh-huh. Corrugated probably.
and you could hear the people on the other side of the wall.
Uh-huh.
In fact, they had very bad windstorms there in Mojave, and
Mhm.
at one point in time, you were in your cradle, and the the storm came in so bad that it covered you up with sand. You know, but fortunately, we had covered you up with a blanket first, and so we took the blanket off. But it was pretty terrible. But then we moved to
Yuma.
no, well, yeah, we moved to Yuma from there.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally moved into an apartment, a little thing.
Mm-hmm. And what was the
but I
population?
was in exchange the
what
whole
was the
time there, too.
population of Mojave when you were there?
Mojave didn't have 1,500 people probably.
Yeah.
How
In
big
fact,
was
the base only had 1,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, very small base. They shut it down when we moved to Yuma. They just moved the whole thing to Yuma. Took over where the Air Force was.
Mm-hmm.
But, that was the first house we bought.
In Yuma?
Yeah,
Okay.
outside, a little town outside of Yuma.
Right. Winter Haven, or was it on the California side or on the
No, it was
on the Arizona
it was
side?
Arizona, yeah, but I
Okay.
can't think of the name of the place now.
Mm.
We were able to buy a house for $200 down. FHA,
Mm-hmm.
not FHA, whatever it was then.
Yeah.
And when we left 4 years later, we sold it for $200. Someone took it over, you know. And the payments were like $85 a month.
Uh-huh.
If we rented in Yuma, we would have paid $125 a month.
Huh.
So it was cheaper to own the house than to
Wow.
rent. So that's what
amazing.
we were doing. But at that point, we'd already had Brenda, and then Kathy was born there
Mhm.
in Yuma.
Right.
So she's an Arizona baby.
Right. I wonder
So
how many
what-
people
what-
know that.
So when you were out here, yeah, I didn't know that. So, you know, you were stationed in Southern California for the most part. Were you staying in contact with your family and?
Yeah,
Connecticut?
about every, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years, we took 30 days and went back and visited, and, you know, because I had 30 days a year that I could spend.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. We drove back each time, pretty much. But really didn't get to spend a lot of time with the family, you know, until I went back after your mother passed.
Mm-hmm.
But we did stay in touch.
Yeah.
In fact, the only time I flew back was when my dad died. He
Yeah,
had
I remember that.
cancer, yeah.
When was that?
He was 65. Had to be
I think it was when we were in Oceanside.
your birthday.
Right? Was it? Yeah, that
Your
sounds about
your
right.
birthday I think you were probably 12 or 13. I don't know.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
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 So you were 30.
Yeah, I was
5,
33 or 4. I retired at 38.
Yeah.
So,
So, getting back to what Dick LeBeau did when he was not doing his Marine Corps thing, I've always seen these flashes of athleticism. You've got hobbies like bowling and gambling.
Yeah, you might
Not so
like
much-
to go to Vegas occasionally.
Yeah, but also the singing. So my recollection of growing up, you had these. You played softball for Marine Corps base leagues. You bowled.
I played
You
hardball.
sang. You played hardball too.
Yeah, I broke my ankle playing
I
hardball.
thought that was a softball accident,
No.
but I do remember that era.
Yeah,
And so
I got in.
how did those things get started? And was athleticism part of your youth, or did you
Yeah,
just
I
yeah
was very. Yeah, I played. My brother and I played football. Not for this high school because the high school cut me.
Mm-hmm.
I started working when I was 12. You know,
Okay.
and before that, my brother and I used to go around collecting cans, papers, tin foil, whatever we could sell, to the junk man.
okay
And that's how we made our money to go to the shows and stuff.
The neighborhood junk man.
Yeah, but when I was 12, I actually had a guy come to me and wanted to know if I could go to work for him. He needed somebody to clean up his store because the store next to his had caught fire, and he had gotten some residual from that. And it was a shoe store, And so I ended up pairing shoes together and putting them together with a needle and thread, you know, to keep together. And I worked that for a while. Then when I had vacation, I worked full time with him.
How many hours a week were you working?
When I was going to school, I was working probably, I'd say 20 hours after school, and you know, a week. I was getting 50 cents an hour or something, I think, at the time. But then I went to work at a grocery store for a friend of mine. But anyway, getting away from that, we played football for it was almost a Pop Warner type league, you know.
Wait, so did the high school cut you because you were working so much?
Well, yeah, I didn't have, I didn't apply, I didn't go to try to get on the team until my freshman and sophomore year. My sophomore year, I decided I was going to try out for a football team, and we worked at it for 30 days or whatever. And the guy cut me because he had a regular bunch of guys that was with him for a long time, and they had their regular team already made up. So even though I was really good with my hands.
I always thought of you as being really coordinated, and it might sound funny, but you know, when we were living with Phyllis in the '90s, so that would have made you, that would have put you in you in your 60s, and we had that little park across the street, and we had a little family football game, and you were still light on your feet even in your 60s, and you were running around and you were catching and throwing like, you know, it was yesterday, you know. Like
I was I say whenever I could get into sports, I did. And like I said, I played hardball at 29 Palms.
Yep.
Yeah. And on a base team of some type.
Yeah.
I played softball in Yuma. That was the way I played softball.
Okay.
But broke my ankle out there, and I ended up at Pendleton for a week or so.
Right. Yeah, so my recollection of your post-accident or your post-leg break is that you were getting a bottle of molasses out of the cupboard. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was getting something out of it, and it fell, and I tried to stop it. Well, I had a cast on my leg except for my toes.
Right.
And I tried to catch it with my foot, and I caught my toenail on the you know how they make the
on the
shells?
kick plate. Yeah,
kick plate, and pulled the toenail back off.
Yeah, it was talk about it was injury to injury plus insult in there as
injury
well.
prone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then when I finally did retire from 29 Palms, I played softball in the league out here for a few years.
Okay.
Doing that.
See, I don't remember that, but I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had to quit softball because I popped my knee on trying to make it around third and at home and to make a quick turn. I sprung my knee and I had the arthroscopic surgery in it. And at that point, I just quit the softball too. I was 50, I guess.
Yeah.
At the time, because it was a senior league.
Right.
And then I got into bowling. So instead.
Well, I remember bowling in 29 Palms.
Yeah, we did that too.
You and Sergeant Casey and you know, other people.
Yeah, we square danced.
And you square danced. That's right.
Yeah.
The square dance, and you and Mom danced a lot. Besides just square
a lot.
dancing, you used to have a real love of that. It seemed like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We were pretty good at it.
I seem to remember that you guys would enter contests and win them or
I don't remember
place in them. But I think that was me superimposing my competitiveness onto what
we
you
used
guys
to go
did.
out. The clubs at the time had a lot of dances, you know, on the base and everything. And then there was some. In fact, right down here in Marty's Valley Inn, they had a club there that used to have dances
Right.
Weekly, and we did a lot of dancing down there too. So.
Yeah.
But we liked to dance. That was good.
Yeah.
Kept us thin. Whatever.
Yeah, and so that was one of your hobbies, obviously. But
Well,
this.
I was going to say about hobbies when I came when I got transferred to Pendleton from Yuma, the house we bought in Vista
Mm-hmm. No restaurant.
was owned by a barber shopper. He was a baritone,
Mm-hmm.
and he got to talking to your mom about me singing. You know,
Mhm.
at the time I was singing, but I was singing in the shower, and I was,
Right.
you know, occasionally I'd club somewhere, whatever. But so he says, you know, well, why don't you have him come out and to sing with us at the barbershop meeting one night or something, and
Mm-hmm.
so he talked me into going with him one night, and that was just, you know,
Yeah.
50 years later, I'm still there.
So are you still singing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got news for you. It's more than 50 years, I think.
No, actually, I joined. Yeah, I joined in.
Because that would have been about 1961, 62. Because 63, we were already in Oceanside. Because I went to first grade at North Terrace Elementary.
I was out there a year.
Yeah.
Well, I actually started in. I thought it was 63 when
Uh-huh.
I joined.
Yeah. Could have been. Could have been.
And I spent what 2, 3. Went to 29 pounds
Mm-hmm.
and spent a couple of years there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was out of it for a little bit.
Right.
So that was a 2-year spell that I was out of the.
Mm-hmm.
But a total of 50 years now. I just got my 50th card
Wow.
this year.
Were you in and out of Vietnam at this point?
I went to Vietnam for
13 months.
13 months, yeah.
And when was that?
66, 67.
Okay.
And,
Do you remember the dates?
I just remember the years, 66 and 67. It was mid-year, both cases.
It was August 8th to September 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and that was another place where they were still fighting, but I was out of it. I was back where all the officers were, and nobody was attacking them for the time.
Right. So was it you were in Da Nang?
Yep.
And you were managing a nightclub.
Yep.
And the nightclub was for people on R&R or just officers?
Staff and SEAL Club.
Okay.
It was called Beau's A Go-Go.
Right. I remember that. Beau's A Go-Go. And so did you dress up in a Hawaiian shirt? What did you wear? What was your
No, we had regular
uniforms?
uniforms.
Yeah.
Mostly
Fatigues.
dungarees, camis.
Yeah.
But we didn't wear formal
Mm-hmm.
stuff
Right.
then. We had a lot of USO shows come through and different shows.
Get to meet Bob Hope or anybody?
No, I met. Let me think who. A boxer.
Boxer in the 60s. Probably wouldn't have been Muhammad Ali. Joe Frazier?
No.
Sonny Liston? Heavyweight or no?
Patterson.
Oh, Floyd Patterson.
Floyd
Okay.
Patterson came out to the club.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was funny because we had a guy that he was a gunny sergeant. He used to spend a lot of time in the club, and when he got a little bit boozed up, he'd always start picking fights with different people, So we kind of told Patterson that this guy was kind of rowdy, and so he went up, and started talking to him, and he hands him a set of gloves, boxing gloves, and he says, "You want to go around?" And the guy said, "No, I don't think so." But he actually gave him the gloves, so it's pretty cool.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
But there were a few. I've got pictures of them in my album and everything, that came through, and names are escaping me right now. But
Mm-hmm.
they're both dead at this point. The two that I remember.
Uh-huh. Anybody like did the Rat Pack ever come through there, or
No.
none of those guys? They're too busy making money in Vegas and
No.
New York.
Jeez, I can't think of that.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Well, there could be a second chapter here, so we'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
Refresh.
I say I got the
pictures.
album in there with the pictures of them, but
Yeah.
So we had.
Do you remember being interested politically, or do you remember the first, who was the first presidential candidate you voted for?
You would have been old enough to vote when Eisenhower won his first term.
You know, I really don't, at the time, I wasn't that political. I remember I voted for Kennedy, even though well, my hometown, my home state is like total Democrat.
Right.
I mean, you didn't have to know what you were voting about, you just knew that you were a Democrat. So we voted Democrat for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Kennedy is one that I recall, voting for. But I since then have become more attuned to what's going on in the country, and I vote whatever. But that's beside the point.
No, I think that kind of is the point. I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've since become Republican pretty much, and
do you vote now exclusively Republican, or do you still look at the?
well, I'll go see what's going on. If there's anybody that interests me that isn't Republican, I'll vote for them. But generally,
Does that happen ever?
no.
So you voted for Kennedy. Do you know when
Not
you made,
yet.
Do you know when you made that switch over from left to right? You vote for Nixon the next time?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember what influenced that decision making process?
At the time, it was just stuff that was going on, nationally for. I didn't see where the Democrats were helping a whole lot of anything,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just made my change.
So Kennedy ran against Nixon in 60, and then he ran against Goldwater in 64. So would you have voted for Goldwater, you think?
No, I didn't vote for Goldwater.
Yeah.
Did your switch over to voting for Nixon have anything to do with his promises to get out of Vietnam at that time?
Well, Vietnam was a strange thing. We came back from Vietnam and everybody hated you. Nobody liked the troops when we came back. It wasn't like coming back from Afghanistan or anything. We had people that didn't like war, period, and they didn't like military, and so you just didn't talk too much about it. But that war was so politically ill-advised that even the military didn't think it was worth the effort.
Right.
We lost a lot of people in that thing for
53,000.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Hardly worth it.
anyway, I ended up being retiring in '73.
Mhm.
Right? That's when we moved here.
Right.
And went
So
to
what
work
did,
for
what did
LaCosta.
you before you retired, before you left the desert, you must have had both apprehension and hope about what the future would have for you. You had 3 kids in
Yeah.
element or middle school and high school, obviously a wife to support, and you guys bought this pretty cool house when you moved here.
Mhm.
So what did you see for your future?
Wait, while I was still in the exchange there at 29 Palms, I had a lot of interaction with companies, people selling things and stuff, and I had people coming in and wanting to know if, when I retired, if I would apply for work with them and this kind of thing. And I ended up going to work for a lighting company,
Luxor Lighting.
Luxor Lighting.
Yeah.
And the one thing, in 20 years of being in the exchange, which is basically a selling thing, people buying and selling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one thing that I was never good at was being a salesman. I couldn't sell anything. And I tried this thing with Luxor Lighting, and the guy took me out on the streets, and we went into stores and tried to sell lighting, and I said, I think that lasted about 3 weeks, and I said, that's
Yeah, my recollection of it is
it isn't going to fly for me. Yeah. So I bailed out of that real fast, like, and so I just kind of looked at newspapers for ads, and I saw an ad for La Costa where they needed a bookkeeper, a payables account. So I went there, and I got a job there.
Mm-hmm.
And from that accounts payable job, the guy that ran the Sportique, which is their golf
Yeah.
shop, found out that I had been doing this for 20 years in the Marine Corps, and so he got me to go to work for him there.
Right. And his name was
Bob Cleary.
Bob Cleary, yeah.
And so I spent, 8 years, I guess, working there with him.
Yeah, it seemed actually longer than that. It
Yeah.
was a good chunk of time, though.
It was from 73 to 80, 81, yeah.
Yeah.
And then at that point, your mother was working for Rain,
Mm-hmm.
Knox Williams.
For who?
Knox Williams.
For Rain,
He owned
Rain
the Rain
water
dealer,
treatment.
Rain water, soft water.
Okay.
And he had just purchased a company in San Diego, a drinking water systems
Mhm.
business. And he asked your mother if I'd be interested in going down there to sell or to run the place. And I said, at the time I was enjoying La Costa. I said, I don't know. I said, what kind of a deal? I never sold water or been interested in water. And he said, well, he didn't really need somebody that knew the water business. He needed somebody who knew how to manage a business. So I went down and worked with him for a little bit, and the price was right, so I went to work for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a year later, he offered to sell 25% of it to us. So we got into that, and 17 years later, that's when we sold the business.
Right.
What did you end up selling it for?
I think at the time it was like 90,000. I mean, it wasn't a big deal but that was 20 years ago too. So, and a company out of Georgia.
Yeah, was it an American Water Company or something? Bought
It
it?
wasn't a water company. It was an investment company,
Oh.
Prometheus.
Hmm.
And what they did is they invested in different businesses, and they had shareholders that would, they would use their money to buy these businesses, and then they would
Right.
get their money from that.
Mhm.
And so at the time they were buying water companies. And they bought ours first in San Diego, and then they bought another one, and they just, kind of combined a group. But anyway,
So you sold the whole company for 90,000?
something like that, yeah.
I thought you got $250,000.
No, wait a minute. It was more than that. It was.
I thought they gave you a buyout.
It was like 900,000.
Okay.
We sold it for. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes more
But
sense.
your share of it was like $250,000, and then they gave you some.
They gave me.
You bought out the last year
I
of
ended
your-
up with a vehicle
Mhm.
and.
The minivan?
Huh?
Was it the minivan?
I think so.
It was a.
Or is this an actual van, not a minivan? Just
Yeah, well, it was a minivan. They called them minivans. It was at Plymouth.
Yeah.
Oh, that one. Yeah, yeah,
Voyager,
of course. Yeah, the Voyager.
Yeah.
Mhm. The
And
Caravan.
So that worked out pretty good for me. And we invested the money, and but
Now I have a vivid memory of you. This is before I knew anything about stocks. I was much younger than I am now. I'm gonna say 15 years ago, maybe. I remember Apple scrolling by on the ticker on the TV, and you going, "Oh yeah, I sold that for $60."
yeah, we had it for a little bit.
Which is now
In fact,
like
it wasn't that much.
800 or something.
Yeah. Well, it was like Qualcomm. We had Qualcomm when it was $40 a share or something, and it's double that now. But
Yeah.
Oh,
at
it's
the time, it was bouncing back and forth back.
right.
And it was actually your mother that was more
Right.
interested in the stocks than me.
Yeah.
She would do more of the research and stuff, and decide to get into these things. And we made a little bit there, but it wasn't a big deal. It was kind of like Jake and Kathy with their
Yeah.
thing.
What'd they do?
He does a lot of buying and selling of stocks. He's at Apple.
He does okay.
Oh,
Yeah, he actually does pretty well for a blue collar guy. He's
Yeah.
he's
Most
making
of
good
it's in
investments.
his IRA, his work thing, and so you don't really know what he's doing until he gets
Right.
ready to get out of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, Qualcomm was the one I called our broker to buy Qualcomm, and he said, "Oh, that's not a good, that's not a good deal."
Mhm.
And at the time, it was like 25 or $30 a share.
Yeah. And before you know it, it was 100.
Yeah.
I remember
All of a sudden, it went up to
it quadruple split. I remember.
yeah, it went up. It went up to damn near $600. It seemed like at one point, and it went back down
Wow.
again. But it was
Yeah.
But right about that same time, that broker was history at that point.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, your mother was the one doing most of the
Mhm.
stock.
Yeah.
And I retired, basically,
Yeah.
in what, 95?
Sounds about right. I guess we would have still been living on Kane Street then in
Yeah.
Bay Park.
Yeah.
So you would have had a pension from the Marines,
Rain.
and then
I just turned 65. I guess I would have been. No, I was.
Actually, you were a couple
50,
years short of 65,
Yeah,
I think, at the time.
Yeah.
in 62,
But I got my
63.
Social
Yeah.
Security shortly
Mhm.
after that, and
Right.
so
And then did you get any kind of pension or going away from La Costa at all? Or was
No.
that just something
No,
that
I
paid
wasn't-
into,
I wasn't
that
there
pay
long.
into Social Security?
I wasn't there long enough. You paid in Social Security, but
Right.
there was never an IRA with them or anything.
Right.
So.
Okay.
But and I got the money we got from the company when we sold
Yeah.
it. That was basically,
Yeah. So in all that time that you worked at La Costa, ever pick up a golf club to hit a ball?
yeah. One time, one of the golf pros asked me about. I asked him, in fact, if he'd take me down and show me how to hit the ball or whatever. And so
Mhm.
he said, yeah. So he took me down to the driving range. I hit a couple of balls, and he said, "Okay, come on, let's go back." That was the end of that. I guess I didn't do too good. I didn't pass the test.
Huh.
I got 2 sets of clubs in Connecticut now that
Really?
in the last year.
Uh-huh.
I still haven't picked up a club yet and
Yeah.
swung it. But
Yeah.
maybe this year.
Well, let's go to your taste in entertainment. So I've always thought that you had a very physical sense of humor. I don't remember like you ever mentioning that you were a fan of Sid Caesar or anyone in particular, but were there entertainers that when you were growing up that you thought were particularly funny versus others? Jerry Lewis, for instance, or...
I met Jerry Lewis at La Costa.
I did.
Yeah, he came. In fact, I played football with him.
Really?
Yeah, out in the parking lot. we were throwing the football back and forth while he was walking to his car and I was walking to my car.
Wow.
But
That is not something you imagine Jerry Lewis doing,
Yeah,
to be honest with
yeah.
you.
We enjoyed what do you call them? Shows that had variety shows.
Mhm,
A
right.
lot. We watched practically every variety show.
So
that
Ted
was-
Mack
Yeah,
and Lawrence Welk.
yeah, way back then, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the big there's bigger ones.
What era?
Well,
Laugh-In. Were you a fan of Laugh-In at all?
Yeah, we watched that.
would be in
Yeah,
the 60s.
that was
I
fun.
remember watching it, but I
That
didn't.
was funny. Yeah, we watched that a lot.
Uh-huh.
And we enjoyed that kind of a thing, and the entertainment that they had on variety shows then was also good.
Mhm.
Elvis
Yeah.
Presley, they had
Right.
Osmond Brothers,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
all that good stuff. And so you can't hardly find a variety show on TV now,
Right.
other than The Voice or
Yeah.
like that.
Which isn't the
Yeah.
same kind of variety
No,
show, really.
no, it isn't.
Huh. And so, staying in entertainment, you had like I remember, and I don't remember if you if you liked them as much as I thought you liked them, but I remember Johnny Cash being on the record player.
I wasn't a big fan of Johnny Cash.
Yeah, but see, I remember you being able to sing in that voice.
Yeah.
In his voice. So maybe that made me think that you liked him.
Frank
more than-
Sinatra.
Yeah, Sinatra, of
yeah,
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and country western at the time wasn't necessarily my big thing either.
Hmm.
Although later on, we did get into it a lot. But we danced a lot of that stuff, you know, so it became part of the
Yeah. So were you a fan of the big band era, like Glenn Miller?
Oh yeah,
and,
Big band was the thing.
Yeah.
Did you do much swing dancing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We did jitterbug and swing dancing, yeah. At 29 pounds, I used to flip your mother over my back and around.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, we did all that.
It's a shame we never saw that because, you know, I can remember you, you know, doing a little bit of, you know, dancing on a living room floor someplace, you know, here and there, but never saw you dance to a full song.
With us to,
Yeah. I can remember going to barbershop quartet shows.
Yeah. Didn't do any dancing there.
Yeah, but no, obviously no dancing.
But between bowling and barbershopping, I was pretty much, you know, I'd bowl a couple times a week and sing practice it one night a week, and then we had all the shows and
Right.
that kind of stuff. So it was fulfilling.
Yeah.
What do you remember about my dad growing up?
I was just going to ask that.
How was he as a you know, say middle schooler and up?
Your dad was one of my favorite kids. You know, kids. I'm gonna put it. You know, and we started just swimming at the pool in I'm gonna say 20. No, not 29 pounds. What was it? Where was it? They had a king. What do you call it? King size. Olympic size pool and.
Well, 29 Palms did.
29 Palms.
29 Palms did have an Olympic-sized
Yeah.
pool, but I was already a swimmer before that. I swam my freshman year in high school here.
I mean, when you were this big, you
Okay,
know, we'd
very small.
we'd take
Okay.
you down and get you swimming there and everything.
Well, that would have been.
And then
Camp Pendleton. Camp Pendleton had that big pool that was 20 yards wide and 50 meters
maybe,
long.
yeah.
And
Anyway, we started you swimming pretty
Yeah.
young age, and you developed into that pretty good. And then we had you playing football, and you were pretty athletic. And you were tall for your age, and so that helped you out some. And so you were a good kid till you went to college. Then you became a vegetarian and all that good stuff.
well, that's funny. That's
he was. We had no fear of drugs or smokes or that kind of stuff like that because he never did that. So.
yeah, that part's definitely true.
Yeah.
And was there a time when you realized that I was gonna be on that straight and narrow path as opposed to being corrupted by? Because you got to remember, I was hanging out with.
We never even feared it.
I was hanging out with, like, my senior year in high school. I was hanging out with Lee Keller and a few other guys who were very much into drugs at the time. I mean, Lee Keller.
We didn't know that.
Yeah,
we didn't know that. So
and I guess I probably wouldn't have shared that with you, but those guys would do drugs every day.
Really?
In school, they were doing them, but it never was the least bit corrupting to me. I remember I made a decision when I was on a bus ride home from a JV football game in 29 Palms, and at that point I had not, been fully accepted. It was my sophomore year, but my first year at 29 Palms, and so they had their cliques and they had, their teams were pretty well set, and so I was kind of an outsider, and I thought it's going to really be hard for me to bust into the starting lineup with these guys. And I thought we were all pretty equivalent athletically. And then on this one bus ride home, I remember these kids are like 14, like I was, 15 maybe if they were older, and they were drinking on the bus.
Really?
And I just thought, okay, I'm making a decision right here. I'm never going to drink, and I'm just going to outlast these guys. And if I have to, win on the virtue of just outlasting people and being more dedicated, that's how it's going to be. So.
Well, I say we never had a fear of. Any of the even the girls, Brenda and Kathy.
Right.
Kathy confessed later on that she had some things going on.
I remember. I do remember that. You mean the stuff that she was holding for a friend?
Anyway, you know, unless you catch somebody doing something, well, you don't really think about that.
Yeah.
Today, it would probably be a different situation totally, because the peer pressure is so great. But
Yeah.
no, I never. He was a pretty good kid. Went to college, you know.
Yeah.
But the only thing I would that would be indifferent about it, what he had very big ideas. You had very big ideas of, like when you went to work for that. What was that? That
Sambusa lady?
yeah,
Oh.
making sambusas. And
You know, I don't know if that was such a big idea. I think that was something that I was gonna do because I didn't have a better opportunity at the time.
But I mean,
know.
you had big plans that you were going to be a sambusa
Mogul.
mogul, yeah. and even to the point of letting them use your credit card and whatever.
Oh well, that part those were big bad decisions.
Yeah, and you know, but
Yeah.
that's the only thing. He had big ideas about doing stuff that didn't pan out until now. He's doing his cookie thing and stuff. But and the rentals, you know.
Well, he's got a little help.
we,
He's got a little help with that, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the fear of that was that he was always going to be in that mode of trying to, you know, make $1 million on this program, and it would flop. And you don't want to see your kid flop, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's.
And he never worked more than 15 hours a week for forever.
Well, it seems like, and I've always kind of thought of that as, you know, you're definitely, it's like a generational thing where, I mean, it seems like it wasn't uncommon back then to have one or two jobs that pension you out, and then that you work for 20 or 40 years, and then you retire. Whereas, you know, with my peers, it's like if you work somewhere longer than 5 years, you're the longest tenured person at that company.
Yeah.
And it seems like
Yeah,
maybe he was almost
you're
early
right.
into
It's
that.
a generational thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They,
Well, I was somewhat entrepreneurial compared to
Yeah.
a lot of people. You know, I mean, I did work at the same restaurant for 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, I taught at San Diego State for 10 years. You know, I mean, I was doing things that were, you know, longer tenure
Yeah.
than most of the people that
I guess-
I knew, but they weren't adding up to.
They weren't 9 to 5.
I guess
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was. You know, I always felt that he had jobs. He's working, and evidently he was making some money doing some of these things. But it always seemed to me like if he worked 15 hours a week, it was more than he wanted to do. At that point,
I was efficient with my time.
you were doing a lot of working out in gyms and frisbee and, you know, things like that, and so.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
my theory was, if he's not asking me for money, he's doing all right. You know? As opposed to Brenda.
Right.
But
Hmm.
yeah, you know, you kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
When you're a parent, is you know.
Right. So, you touched on philosophy just a little bit just now. Do you have? So you're in your 80s, obviously.
80.
You're in your 80s. We hope you're going to last into your 80s then.
Okay.
Further into them. Was there a point in your life where you felt like you had either a philosophical or a psychological approach that would yield some degree of longevity, that would sort of, you know, keep stress from mounting and aging you more quickly or anything like that?
Well, you know, my philosophy has always been, if I got into something, it was because I was meant to get into it. You know, like I got into the water business, I got into La Costa, I got into all, you know, and it was, I got into the Marine Corps. Evidently, it was because I was programmed to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never worried about what my next job was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my hobbies to
Mm-hmm.
keep the stress down,
Right.
you know. And so I never really had a lot of stress in my life,
Right.
other than when your mother got, really sick, and I
Right.
ended up having to do everything for.
Mhm.
But even that was,
Yeah.
it became.
So you were
normal.
her caretaker for probably the last 7 to 10 years of her life,
Right.
and that was, you could say that took a toll on you. It would take a toll on anybody because you basically
Yeah.
worked during the day, and then you would come home and take care of mom,
Yeah.
and then go back to work, and you didn't really have
It
any.
worked out fine when I retired, because then I was
Right.
I could spend full time with her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that couldn't have been your picture of how you were going to spend your retirement. I mean, you were 7 years with her while she was, on that,
Yeah.
slow downslope
Yeah.
of.
But even at that, we still had a social life. We still, we went to Vegas.
Mhm.
We wanted to, and
Right.
she spent a lot of time on the computer. That was her thing.
Yeah.
Doing the computer thing.
Right.
And so it wasn't that stressful as far. She wasn't sickly.
Mhm.
You wouldn't call her sickly, like she was laying in the bed and you had to
Right.
feed
She's
her.
more incapacitated.
Yeah,
She's
she just was on
not
oxygen
full
all the time
capacity,
and that kind
yeah.
of stuff. But so we still had a social life, more or less, and
Mhm.
it wasn't. I could still go barber shopping, except the last couple of years
Right.
I quit that.
Mhm.
But so. Like I said, I don't think I had a lot of stress in my life.
Yeah. So, I would say, so my early memory of you addressing psychology was that you told me one day that you're just not a Type A personality, and that was
Probably, yeah.
that was
In fact,
after
we
Marines, probably during the La Costa era.
yeah, I could. I worked with Type A's,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they would probably be more stressed out than anybody I know.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
if I wanted to get things done in work or whatever,
Mhm.
I just made sure that they understood what I wanted to get done.
Mhm.
And if they didn't do it, they were history.
Mhm.
I had a guy working for me. One of the main things in the water business was customer came first, and don't steal from me.
Mhm. Right.
And I had a guy that'd been working for us for 10, 12 years, I guess. And he did that. He he cheated on his paperwork and basically stealing time from me, and so he was gone.
And which one was that?
The black guy at Washington.
Okay. I don't think I met him.
Yeah. But anyway,
He was there for years.
Yeah,
Years and years?
he worked for the old man before me, and then he was. But I never. I had in the exchange. I had gals working for me in the cash registers that were playing around with the money in the cash registers, and as soon as I was informed or found out,
Mhm.
they were gone.
Yeah.
I didn't give them a second choice. You
Right.
didn't have a second chance. That was
Mhm.
it. But initially, when I'd have meetings with everybody, and I'd tell them exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
And I had things like gals that when you go up to a counter and you buy something, and you give them a $20 bill or something, and they give you $1.50 worth of dimes, because they didn't want to open a roll of quarters or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, they would do that once. with me.
Yeah.
And then they'd open every friggin' roll of coin they had in their thing and put them in the drawer, and end up counting them at the end of the night, because little things like that. Just,
So you were into fundamentals.
Yeah.
I like that. Appreciate that.
yeah, if I had a guy that was selling pistols and rifles and stuff because he wasn't keeping records like he's supposed to,
Hmm.
and came to my attention that we had inventory, and the inventory was all screwed up because the books weren't being kept right.
Mhm.
Called him in and asked him about it, and he said, you're going.
Hmm. Now, did you have any favorite friends, either growing up or in your Marine Corps? I mean, the Fernandez and we were pretty close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I got transferred to San Diego for drill instructor's duty, and Fernandez was down there.
I remember that.
He helped me get out of that. So, but
You were supposed to be a drill instructor?
yeah,
He was not cut out.
I
He
was
was
a
not
gunnery,
cut
I
out
was
to
a
be a
gunnery
drill
sergeant
instructor.
with 16 years, and I guess at the time or something they wanted to make me a drill instructor, and I said, no, I don't want to be a drill instructor. Not at that time. The mothers were up in arms about the kids being in the military at the time. So
Yeah, but I think
Is that
more
'cause
than
of the- 'cause of
anything,
the draft?
I don't know if it was a draft.
no, it wasn't that.
was
But
just,
but more than anything, at that stage of your life, you know, you had already established that you were not a drill instructor, rah,
right.
you know, military kind of guy. You happened to be a civilian who wore a uniform. In my book, you know, you had been managing
Stores.
nightclubs and stores, and you just happened to have, you know, bars on your sleeve,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. So
Well, I could have done the job, but I
Well-
I did. It's something I didn't want to do, so I
exactly, you could have done the
my way out.
job.
They know what they did to me. They sent me to 29 bombs.
Did they do that as a punishment for not going to San Diego?
Well, we always said that because
Oh.
29 bombs at the time was the was the pits. You know?
Right.
But
I'm not sure it's any better now, but
But anyway,
yeah. So your close acquaintances or friends.
oh yeah. Well, I had in high school. I had a number of close friends.
Running mates.
I worked with a kid named Stanley Scraper that his dad owned a grocery store. That was one of the stores I worked in at some point in time. But they lived right around the corner from us, and we did a lot of things together. And
Did you get into trouble at all in high school? Any mischief?
I don't think so.
No.
No. I was pretty squared away. I didn't get into fights or anything like that, except with my brother.
Right. Right. So
Occasionally.
tell us about your siblings and your relationship with them, because I know that you had. So Lorraine was
My
the
oldest
oldest
sister.
by far.
Yeah.
By the time.
She was the first one, and then 9 years later, my older brother was born, then me, and then my sister,
Mhm.
and then my younger brother.
Right.
So there's 5 of us. My dad always said my mother was, my mother was, what was the term? She didn't like sex.
Who's this?
My dad used to always say that my mother didn't like sex. She had one, and then 9 years later another, and then 16 months, and then 5 years after that. So.
Yeah. So ultimately, the gap between Lorraine and Bob was about 15, 17 years, something like that.
yeah.
Because didn't you have a nephew who was older than your oldest?
Denny.
Yeah.
In Florida, he's a couple months old, either a couple months older or younger than Bob, and their uncle and nephew.
Right.
In fact, he's got cancer. They give him 2 months.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
But my sister passed away at 70
Mm-hmm.
in Colorado
Right.
from lung cancer.
Mm-hmm. That was Lorraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never smoked,
Hmm.
but she never had tests done for anything either. For
Right.
mammograms or
Right.
like that. So.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother passed away at 74, I guess.
That was Butch?
Yeah, Butch.
Yeah.
From eventually a heart attack, but he had a couple of strokes.
Right. And he was on his last leg when you and Jackie got married, right?
Yeah, he was in a home
Mm-hmm.
from having strokes. He had
Right.
a couple of strokes.
Right.
And they did finally let him out, and then he had a heart attack. So.
So there's still 3 of you left, right?
Yeah, my sister
Mhm.
and my brother Bob. He's
Right.
still hanging in there. He's still working.
Really?
Well, he's working at a
He's dabbling.
no. He's a bartender at a American Legion club,
Mm-hmm.
and just to make enough money to
Right.
go to Aruba once a year, or whatever
Right.
he wants to do. So.
And so they still basically I always got the impression your entire family, just except for you, stayed rooted in Putnam.
Well, my sister was the first one that
Mm-hmm.
left. She
Oh, she's the one you went and lived with in Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah she flew the coop and went to Indiana and married a couple of times, but she would always end up coming back for living with my mother for a period of time. They got along like cat and dog, but and then she'd leave again, and she eventually ended up in Colorado. So,
Yeah.
but, so her and I were the ones that flew the coop. Everybody else stayed right there.
Right.
And
Right. Hmm. Now, what about your relationship with your in-laws? What did you think of Mom's family?
We got along. Her stepdad was a
Willie.
bear. Yeah.
I had other words
He's
for him.
he's the one that before I ever married him, when he found out I was in the Marine Corps, you mean you're gonna marry a goddamn Marine? He didn't like.
Yeah, he had a pretty foul mouth.
Yeah.
I remember he smoked unfiltered Camels and Pall Malls, and he hit us when you guys would drop us off to go to Vegas or whatever, and we'd stay in Costa Mesa for a
I didn't
weekend,
know
and
that.
he'd hit us.
Yeah.
But fortunately for I think everybody, he didn't last that long.
No.
He died in his mid-50s or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mother was. Your mom and her didn't get along that great either,
I've heard more about that after.
She was a very.
She was German.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But she wasn't that clean either. I mean, she had dishes in the sink all the time. It was but for the little bit of time that we spent with them, it was fine.
I'll All right. So your did you call her Mom or did you call her Mrs. Bilderback?
I think we called her Mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And then her sister, we got along with her. But
Right.
She spent some time here.
Barbara.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Mhm.
The brothers, the one brother died very young.
Yes, Bill.
And Donald we got along with pretty good.
Right. Yeah. Now Donald was very introverted. I remember he would come here and sit in a chair in a corner, and you would not even know he was here most of the time.
And if his mother was with him, she took care of him the whole time he was sitting there.
Yeah.
The whole time she even cut his food for him, I think, at the table.
Just about. It was close to that. I don't think it was quite that
And
severe.
the guy was a genius,
Yeah,
Menza.
he was. But at the same time, he was very well. Besides the introversion, he just was very. He had not evolved socially.
No, he never married, never had,
Dated.
I don't know if he had a girlfriend.
I don't think he ever even went on a date in his
Yeah.
entire life.
Yeah.
So I also don't think he used deodorant, but we can edit that out. But
He's the one who you played chess with?
yeah, taught us how to play chess and different card games, and I mean he was a genius for sure.
Built a computer before
Yeah,
you could do that.
yeah, yeah, and like in the '60s.
In fact, I think he built a TV at one point.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I have his Betamax from 1980 in my garage.
He drove a car.
A Cougar.
That would-
Cougar was his brand.
He would drive that car until the wheels fell off
Yeah.
before he'd ever buy another one, and he had money that he could.
Yeah.
He hadn't.
Who did he work
hadn't
for?
printed yet.
He worked for Lockheed,
Lockheed?
and Boeing. Boeing was the Boeing was the company that he was employed by when he died.
Died,
but
yeah.
but only he basically worked for one company that just got bought out through all
and
the
just
various
merging.
mergers of military industrial complex companies.
I think the last thing he was working on was a hovercraft for
Really.
above water.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
computer geek.
Although when we went to his memorial service when he, after he died, and there were a lot of people there who just loved the heck out of him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would have never
He was-
guessed, given his loner existence. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't let anybody into his house the last 20 years after his mom died. He would not because he was less of a housekeeper than his mom. Let's put it that way.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
We cleaned up his backyard for him. It was,
yeah, it was a disaster.
but you're right.
So.
Yeah, we didn't. Nobody wanted to go in his house.
Yeah,
Put it that way.
yeah. So
But it's fine. Yeah, we got along fine with
Uh-huh.
the in-laws. Pretty much.
right.
You kind of roll with the punches when
Yeah.
his dad or his stepdad.
Right. I remember we used to go visit them when they lived in both Santa Ana and Costa Mesa. When they after her mom had moved, after mom's mom,
Yeah, yeah.
because she grew up
Yeah.
in Santa Ana, then moved to Costa Mesa, and we would go visit them. And we had some nice friends that were our age up the block, and we would go hang out with them. And I remember one time I ran through a plate glass window and we were playing hide and seek.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that or not,
Yeah.
but. Actually, you guys were gone because I remember Grandma took me to the hospital.
Yeah, I guess we
And,
we just heard about it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So luckily, I was wearing a baseball cap, and the cap flattened in front of my face as I ran through the window, and I got a tiny little cut on my chin, and that was it. That was the extent of it. Yeah. So, but Grandma was actually very smart. I thought that she was. She was a driving force for education in her, in her family, and
I don't know. Like I said, we didn't really have that much. Your mother didn't get along with it very well, so we
Well-
occasionally if we visited twice a year, that was
Well, and that was what I was going to, point out was that one of my, I think I might have told Grant about this recently, one of my more indelible memories is because we used to buy milk at the commissary and we would take it to them in Costa Mesa, and because you could get it for 10 cents a gallon at the commissary, and I forget how much it was where they were buying it, but it was a better deal for you to get it for them. So as a kind gesture, we would take them half a dozen gallons or half gallons of milk when we would go visit. And one time, Mom and Grandma got in a fight, and they were throwing half gallons of milk at each other
I don't remember that.
from the
I
car.
must not have been around.
From the car to the house. No, you were in the
Yeah.
driver's seat, and Mom was standing with the car door open and just heaving these half gallons of milk at her mom, and her mom was heaving them back, and then we pulled out of the driveway and left. But that was a crazy moment.
Yeah. But we had some of those indelible memories.
Yeah.
You remember the time we stopped at the Mexican restaurant to eat, and we all sat down and had water and whatever, and looking at the menu, and the menu was too high, so we got up and left.
Yes, I remember that. So
She took you guys out, and I'm sitting there with waiting, and then I out the door. We had a free dip and chip, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you remember? There was a time when we went to a game. We were wanting to go to a game between the Chargers and the Chiefs.
I had just
You
gotten
remember
back
that?
from Vietnam, I think.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
Yeah, and we were going to go to the Charger game,
Mm-hmm.
and found out that I don't know how we on the way did we find out how much it was? It was
No, what happened was, so you had, I feel like I shouldn't be telling the story because you're on camera, but we went to, you had $13 on you, and we went down to it was $1 for parking. So we get down there, and it's $4.50 a ticket, and this was before they took credit cards. You might not even had credit cards. So
I didn't even think we pulled into the.
no, we got into the parking lot, paid the $1, and then we got to the window, and you only had $12 left, and it was $13.50 for the total, and we couldn't.
It was pretty cheap for a football game.
Yeah, exactly. But this was 1969, and this was actually so the stadium. The
Must
stadium
have been
didn't,
'67 probably.
the stadium didn't get built until '68.
Yeah.
So and so that's where we.
So we ended up going down to San Diego. And
We
I got a
did.
ticket for making
Yes.
an illegal turn.
Exactly, making an illegal left turn
And
from
the
the
damn
middle
ticket
lane.
cost me.
And remember how much the ticket cost?
It wasn't. I don't know.
It was the exact same amount that it would have cost to go to a
Cost to go to
football
the
game,
game,
$13.50. And I remember you bought me a skateboard with metal wheels, steel wheels that day. So
Yeah, we ate. I think we ate at
we
a
might have.
Mexican restaurant.
Probably
down there in
probably
town,
went to a
in
Mexican
San
restaurant.
Diego, yeah.
So, do you remember the time that you told the barber, or you told me to tell the barber
Yeah.
to get
Recon.
to get a recon?
This is at the base.
Yeah.
He was taking him to get a haircut, and I went I was doing some shopping or something. I says, well, tell the barber you want a recon.
Yeah.
So he
Assuming I knew what a recon was.
He did.
And that you were joking.
How old were you then?
10.
10, 11?
10.
Yeah. He comes back and he's got a recon.
What else did I have at that time, Dad? I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah, he hated it. I says, well, what'd you tell him that for? You said to tell him.
So what did you do to put for the salve in the wound?
I don't know.
You bought me a Marine Corps sweatshirt,
Oh,
which I did not want. I didn't want to look any more like a Marine than I already did. You bought me this red and yellow Marine Corps
You got a
sweatshirt.
recon now. What are you talking about?
No, that's all I can do. A real recon is like a number 1 setting. This is a number 6.
Yeah.
So
Shaved to the sides.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Do you remember the era when I graduated from Lincoln Junior High School, and that was the era when they were still initiating the incoming freshmen by shaving their heads? You remember those days? You remember that?
No.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I don't remember you getting your head shaved.
Well, so the funny story was this, so basically the upperclassmen would wait at the end of the day for class to end, and they would chase as many of the graduating 8th graders as they could. If they could catch them, they'd shave their heads basically on the spot. They'd put them in their own van, or they'd take them to a house and do that. I managed to get home, and Mom watched this sort of pack of encroaching hyenas who wanted to shave my head, and she said, that's just not going to happen. You're not going to shave my son's head, but I'll tell you what, I'll let you give him a friar tuck. So I ended up with a friar tuck. They left the length on the sides, and they just shaved the top of my head, which was probably more embarrassing than it would have been to just have one uni-length, shaved head. And I remember that I went to visit Grandma in Costa Mesa, and she took me to the beach in Newport Beach, down from where she lived. And I just remember, sitting on the beach and not wanting anyone to come up and talk to me because I had this ridiculous haircut.
Why didn't you just buzz the rest of it?
I don't know why we didn't buzz the rest of it. I think we might have started to slightly even it out.
You're trying to do a comb over? Or
Yeah.
you were wearing a yarmulke for a couple weeks?
A couple months, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. All right, what are we leaving out, Pops?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm already retired. And
Yeah, we retired, and we've touched on things that were sort of tangential to how you got to be the person you are.
Really?
Have you enjoyed your retirement as you thought you would have now? I mean, you.
yeah, if people ask me, do you enjoy retirement? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I don't have to get up in the morning and get dressed and go to work. And,
Right. Now, do you still
Get dressed?
Yeah, occasionally.
do you still manage investments? What do you do to keep your mind mentally aware?
Well, I have, what I do is crossword puzzles and,
There's something to be
and
said for that.
Scrabble with Kathy
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But I still have my brokers that I work with through things. I don't invest daily. I don't.
Right. You don't get up and first thing manage your
No,
portfolio
no,
before you have
no,
breakfast.
I get my mail monthly reports and stuff and check to see if they're okay and but we're at this point comfortable. With,
Yeah.
this,
Would you say that you are more comfortable than when you retired? I mean, is there like some limit? Like if you lived to be 100, would you be worried about running out, or are you just
I wouldn't worry about it. No.
Yeah.
No, I think at the point that I retired, we were pretty okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, the general month to month has to be pretty low in terms of expenditure. I mean, the house is...
there's no house payment, no car payment. The only thing we pay is utilities and that kind of stuff, and food and
And medical is covered through the VA?
medical. No, the medical's covered through my Medicare and TRICARE for life for military retirement.
Okay.
We do have a copay and occasionally,
Mhm.
But we started going out to the base now for medicines and stuff, so it's free.
Right. So do you still shop at the commissary?
Yeah.
You do?
Commissary, yeah. And even in Connecticut, we've been going out to the Navy base out there.
Mhm.
Not all the time like we did here, because it's like 45 minutes to
Right.
get there.
Right.
But we have places that, we sell reasonably.
Mhm.
We go in a sticker shock, right, Jackie?
Huh?
We go in a sticker shock and we go in
Oh,
shop at the
Connecticut?
local grocery
Yeah.
stores there.
Huh.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
After shopping,
So I
yeah.
haven't been in a commissary since we,
Yeah.
since I lived here, basically. I do remember that being enough of a bargain, though, that's you definitely wanted to
Oh,
shop
yeah.
at the commissary as long as you had privileges. What's the most you've ever won in a day or a night of gambling?
Oh, last year, what I win, 1,700?
I say nothing.
What? I didn't say no.
That's not
1,700,
bad. And what's the most you've ever lost, you think?
4 or 5.
Yeah. And would that be for? So let's say you lose $400 or $500. Is that over the course of a couple hours, a couple days?
That's over the course of a couple hours generally.
You're playing craps.
And is craps your
Easy
game?
come, easy go, right?
Yeah, craps and cards,
Yeah.
Poker, hold'em.
No, well, Texas Hold'em, used to play that here.
Mhm.
After your mother passed, I went to the Ocean's 11.
Mm-hmm.
I won 2,500 there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
One hand or
No,
one
no,
night
what
of
it was,
hands?
they had what they call a jackpot,
Mhm.
and if you're playing at a table with 6, 7 guys, people,
Mhm.
and if somebody lost a hand, like say he had a full house, or
Mhm.
to somebody that had a straight flush, say, they paid you so much for being having a
For second place?
having a bad, what do you call it, bad hand or whatever,
Mhm.
and everybody at the table got paid for certain, and so I ended up being at a table with somebody doing that, and I'm pretty. It was $2,500. Everybody got $2,500. They had the pot on the wall,
Wow.
of how much the whole thing was worth.
Hmm.
The winner got so much, the loser got so much, and then everybody else got a share. And so it was one of those lucky breaks, sitting at the right table at the right time.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
And your best,
but blackjack is the other game that
right. Your best score in bowling, 298,
288.
288, and
I blew the last frame.
How come you got a 300 thing out here?
I don't have a
Oh,
300 thing.
what's the 600 series and the 225?
That 225 game and the 600 series, yeah, that's 3 games, a 200 game at least.
I thought you won once.
But
and that game, or that what do you call it? Just one bowling game? Is it? So that line was the week after Mom died.
no,
It was very soon after she died.
I think I was going. Actually, I was going over for a senior thing that they had
Mhm.
in the afternoon.
On that last frame, were there people lined up watching?
Yeah,
you?
always. Yeah, they always standing there. Yeah, go. Watching it.
Did you let the
choke.
crowd? Did you let the crowd get to you?
Yeah, you joke. Yeah. Just it doesn't take much to just miss the mark by
Yeah.
that much.
Right.
Can you still see it?
Yeah, probably. No, it doesn't bother me at this point. I've had games in 250s, 260s, but
Mhm.
I've never had a 300.
Yeah.
I just never got there.
Huh. And are you still bowling leagues?
I was bowling a senior
Mhm.
league on Mondays,
Right.
Monday afternoon,
How do you do?
up until my shoulder surgery, and then I had to quit.
Mhm.
How do you do compared to in the league?
Well, generally I'll look at the sheet for the period that I'm bowling, there might be one guy got a higher average than me of the whole list.
Wow.
Of course, they're all seniors, so it's
Right. But still, I mean, you know, it's fair to compare yourself to your peers.
yeah.
Would you say that you've had, over the course of your life, a relatively competitive mentality when it comes to sports?
Oh
Or
yeah.
you,
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
I'm pretty competitive.
yeah.
Yeah. Even just watching games. You know.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah. Well, I've always known you to be a sports fan.
yeah.
Were you a Red Sox fan growing
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Who are your early memory heroes from those days?
Ted Williams,
Carl.
Yastrzemski. There's a few. Of course, I left when I was 17, so it's.
Yeah,
and,
but I remember when, like in the '68 World Series, when they lost to the Cardinals, you were heartbroken. You know,
Is that the one where the first baseman blew the?
Bill Buckner?
No, that was later. Yeah, that was in the '80s.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I actually dated his ex-wife for a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice thing. But anyway, all right. So they were the Boston Patriots at the time, but I didn't know that you were ever a Patriots fan because you were a Chargers fan as soon as they came into existence here. It seemed
Yeah.
like.
I was living out here. Yeah. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And.
So- I guess the Patriots
don't-
probably didn't
yeah, I
exist
don't-
when you
no,
were growing up.
The Patriots weren't.
No,
there.
because the AFL didn't come into
Right.
existence until
Yeah.
'62.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
But
Hmm.
when we go back to Connecticut, you got to be Patriots and Red Sox. You know, it's.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
No.
no. I was listening to Hannity and his group today.
Well, there's your first mistake.
Sean talking about Brady.
All right. So when you're back there, does your allegiance to the Padres and the Chargers bleed
Change? No.
through?
No.
No, it doesn't change.
So you get to
Well,
be
if
the, you get to
if
be
the
the one
Chargers
guy
are
in the
playing
room.
the
who's-
Patriots, I'm wearing a Charger shirt, and everyone
Okay.
else is wearing Patriot stuff.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. And so the Padres don't really play the Red Sox ever. I mean, I can't remember them ever playing each other in
They-
interleague.
They do.
So-
Yeah,
They could.
Occasionally
They
they'll
could,
play
but I don't remember
when
them
they have the
playing.
in-league
Yeah.
play. Occasionally.
I know they try to rotate that.
Like
but
every couple of years they
I
play.
remember, yeah, it seems like every 3 years you have that cycle through. Huh.
This year, if they played I think the Padres would kick their butt
Oh, maybe.
because they're not
Yeah.
doing too well.
Yeah.
Red Sox, they're in last place.
Huh. Well, it's
Well,
still
it might change.
really early.
Oh yeah, it's,
Padres aren't doing as well as I thought they were going to do. They started
Yeah.
off pretty well, but now they're,
well they
they're under 500.
started off I thought mediocre, and then they picked up, and then they dropped back, and they picked.
Mhm.
You know, it's the usual.
I think they have a better team to watch,
Yeah.
and they have the potential to get very hot.
How long are you're leaving soon to go back to Connecticut, right?
19.
And when do you come back?
First part of January sometime.
Mm-hmm.
First part of January?
Yeah. So you won't mind if we rent the house out for, you know.
I won't mind, but your sister will kill you.
Let's edit that. Well, maybe I'll just pay my sister out of the booty.
I don't have my house set up for
You
people
don't.
to come in.
You don't. We'd have to modify it a little bit. What do you like about? Have you gotten used to the weather in Connecticut for these long winters that you've been
Pretty much, yeah. We
subjecting yourself to?
yeah we do the swimming thing as long as the water's decent,
Mm-hmm.
and then it starts cooling out, so we do more casino stuff than
Foxwoods?
swimming. Yeah,
And what's the other one there? There's
Mohegan Sun.
Mohegan Sun. Yeah, I've been to the Mohegan Sun.
Yeah. Well, they're the Indian casinos that are like Vegas.
Mhm.
These out here are not.
Right.
Well, out here, you know, what is it, when you play roulette, it's out of a deck of cards.
Everything's got to be a card game. They can't even shoot craps without playing. Yeah, it's a card game.
Right.
You know, I did pretty well last time even with the cards, but it's something I enjoy the dice, and you know, they do roll the dice, but they're different colored cubes, and And whatever the color comes up predominant, they pull a card for the number.
Hmm.
It's kind of weird,
That is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I can see
but that's a
regulation-wise.
California regulation
Yeah.
that they're required to use cards.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why they did that, but that's,
Yeah. I think it was probably in the interest of making people have to keep going to Vegas. You know, I bet you
think so?
Vegas had a ton of
Could be,
influence
could
and
be.
lobbying
Yeah, could
and
be.
effort in that.
yeah. And they're into slot machines more than anything because they make more money from the slot machines than they do from.
Right.
Anything else, right?
Hmm.
But,
Do you ever go to shows?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in Connecticut, we went to see the Donnie and Marie Osmond,
Yeah.
and a couple of things.
Jersey Boys.
We went, yeah, out here we went to see the Jersey Boys.
The Jersey Boys.
You haven't seen
I
them?
don't know who the Jersey Boys. I've heard the name. I think.
This has been a musical that's been on for
Yeah, no, the
years.
the guy that was the initial, it was, what was his name, Jackie?
Huh?
The one that the Jersey Boys originated from.
Oh, shoot.
He was just on TV, in
Yeah.
fact, a little bit ago.
Oh, shoot.
Anyway, he was the original Jersey Boy,
Mm-hmm.
his group, and then they changed the name from whatever it was to,
Okay.
but the guy that does the main singing is this.
Okay. It's not Lance Bass or.
No, he's he's crazy, he's gotta be in his 70s now,
Oh, okay. All right.
but he's still doing his thing.
Were you
Lewis?
Were you a fan of Mel Torme? And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Loved Mel Torme,
Yeah. He was a crooner, huh?
he's a crooner.
Yeah. Well, I think we should call it a couple hours and revisit this when you get back from Connecticut.
Yeah. I mean, we gotta do this again?
Well, I think as long as you're taking up oxygen, we
Yeah.
should keep doing this. This was
Yeah.
fun. I really feel like I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did exactly what I had hoped, which was to have you tell your story. Although I think I interrupted quite a bit, but
Yes,
but-
you did.
I need the remembrance.
yeah. So I think that you'll think of things that you were
Right.
on the verge of remembering this time around, and we'll watch this and think of new questions perhaps to ask.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a real nice thing.
Yeah.
Save for posterity.
yeah. So.